Welcome to a new series called Setup Troubleshooting, and in this series I aim to analyze a user submitted setup. We'll look at ways we can hide its weaknesses and amplify its strengths. So I'll be taking note of the player's physical attributes, their racket obviously, the string that they're using, whether or not they use a dampener, and any other modifications that would be important for me to know. Of course, they would also have to let me know what the budget is, and then we would work around the budget to try and find a solution to the issues that they're having. So yeah, let's get into the first episode. Let's get into the player profile, and we'll call him Dimitri, obviously not his real name, but Dimitri is roughly about 5'9" tall, has an average build, has a semi-western forehand grip, and a one-handed Eastern backhand. He describes himself more as a steady baseliner, although the issue he's having is he wants to play more of an aggressive baseline style, but has been unable to make the transition so far. And so that's where we come in. We're going to try and help him play the style, play the type of strategy he wants to on court. And so let's get into his setup. The racket that Dimitri uses is the Wilson BLX Pro Open. It's not to be confused with the 2012 BLX Pro Open. This version, if I remember correctly, was released in 2010. And so let's get a little deeper into the specs. I'm pulling these from the Racket Recommender tool on Tennis Warehouse. The head size is 100 square inches. The weight is 315.9 grams. The swing weight is 323, and the vibration frequency is 159.3 hertz. And going a little bit more in depth, we can see the racket recorded a shot speed of 65.7 miles an hour. The string pattern is 16 by 19. The beam width is 26 millimeters, and the head width is 24.4 centimeters. Unfortunately, Dimitri does not know what string is in the racket. He does use a dampener. He does not use string savers. There's no additional weight, and the budget he's given me is £60. So pretty interesting, because that's more than enough for a few premium strings, but nowhere near enough for a new racket. So we're going to look at the string side of things and see what we can come up with. Okay, helping a player transition from one play style to another is not usually something I'm requested to do. So this is pretty new for me. I'm usually asked to help with a particular shot or identify a weakness within a player's game. But let's get on to it. I've had to think about what we can do within the budget, and I'm going to start off with the cheapest option first. So Dimitri's described himself as an intermediate to advanced player, meaning his technique is pretty good. And so bearing that in mind, I've had a look at his setup. The racket itself is quite powerful, and so I'm guessing from there's a lack of length control. The vibration frequency tells me that it's pretty good when it comes to controlling the trajectory. It's on the higher end of the scale at 159 hertz. And bearing all that in mind, I've decided the first solution is the use of string savers. So these are Torner cross string savers. You can get them online for roughly about £9, and you can get refills for £9 as well. And what I want you to try is apply these string savers on either the top cross string or the second top cross string. Now you can do it any way you like, any pattern you like. You could put, I'm going to say, put 4 string savers to start off with. You can put them all at the top if you prefer, or you can do them in a crisscross pattern, sort of like Federer did back in the day, or you can place them all on the second from top cross string. It really is up to you. It doesn't matter too much at the moment. And the reason we're going to do this is because it limits the amount of string movement, meaning it limits the deflection. and it lowers the launch angle with which the ball can come off of the string bed. So taking that into account, it should increase your length control, and with a lower launch angle, you're required to hit upwards more on the ball. Sort of like when you have a Western grip, you're kind of forced to hit up on the ball, otherwise the ball will go into the bottom of the net. It works similarly to that, not as extreme, but similarly, and it does decrease the dwell time a little, but hopefully the decrease in launch angle will offset that lack of length control caused by the decrease in dwell time. And so overall, by placing the string savers on the top two cross strings, we're placing about 4 just to begin with, we should experience a lower launch angle, so more length control, more spin, which again increases length control. We will see a decrease in the dwell time, which increases the shot speed, which in theory should decrease the length control, but I'm hoping that what I said previously will offset that decrease. And also, because we've got the string savers up at the top, it means that the ball will not come into contact with the string savers, meaning that the strings are still able, well, the main strings are still able to slide on the crosses and snap back. And so we'll still have access to additional spin through the use of snapback. And also, because there's less deflection, we'll have an increase in the trajectory, directional, and height control on top of that. So overall, it usually is a net positive. The best thing to do is try it out, take it out onto court, and see what the experience is for you, because reality tends to throw up a few surprises that are difficult to account for. But usually in my experience, it's a net positive. So give that a go. It would cost roughly about £9 to execute this strategy. But a few warnings I want to give you before you do so. This is a higher maintenance strategy, meaning after every practice session, I'm just going to tell you the truth, you probably need to replace the string savers. Because if you don't, the strings will start to move and they won't snap back. The grippiness of the string saver is at its maximum when you first install the saver onto the string bed. As you play more and more with the setup, the string savers will start to wear down, they'll lose that grippiness, they'll start to move and slide out of position, and of course they won't snap back. And in that case, you'll just get a longer dwell time, more deflection, you'll have less trajectory control, and because of the longer dwell time, you'll have a higher launch angle, you'll have a decrease in length control. So all in all, it's a extremely net negative. So please, if you do choose this option, after every practice session, after every match, replace the string savers. And I also want to warn you as well, please do not place the string savers at any point on the string bed where the ball could potentially come into contact with it. Once that string saver is installed, access to snapback is severely limited. So all you're doing is decreasing the dwell time, decreasing the length control as a result. You're severely decreasing deflection. In fact, in some cases, you're bringing it to 0 because it can't move at all. So you've got no access to snapback. And what it does is, it does increase power a lot. So if you're tall and you're looking to increase the power on your flat serve, I mean, that's the only reason I could think you would want to do this. Otherwise, just stay away from it, because you'll lose control over your ground strokes, your volleys, everything else. You'll lose control over the length. So there, I've told you. If you still go ahead and do it, hey, that's on you. Hence why I'm telling you to place the string savers at the top here on the top 2 cross strings, because the ball's not going to come into contact. Here, it's going to be more around this area, and the strings will still be able to move and snap back. Yeah, so that is the first option. The cheaper option, but pretty high maintenance. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, give it a go, see how it gets on, and we'll revisit at a later time. Okay, so we're going to look at some strings now, and this option probably be a little bit more expensive, but a little less maintenance on top of that. So because we don't have the string that Dimitri is using at the moment, he doesn't know which one it is. We don't really have a platform to work with. So I've had a look at the racket shot speed at 65.7 miles an hour. That's on the higher end, that's above average, I would say. And so bearing that in mind, I'm gonna start off on the stiffness scale at a string roughly about 200 pounds. I think this is a safer platform to start off with. And the first string we're going to look at is the Dunlop Explosive Tour 16. This is quite a low powered string, not on the extreme end, but moving towards that way. And I feel like this will be helpful to Dimitri if you're coming up against opponents that aren't as powerful. Perhaps they're very steady as are you, and you're unable to really dominate the majority of rallies. They're quite clever and strategic in the way that they play. And this string, with its higher dwell time and lower shot speed, should allow you to hit out more aggressively and more consistently from the back of the court. In doing so, you give your opponent less opportunity to play those tricky shots that put you in an awkward position on the court and have him in the ascendancy. The increase in deflection should give you a lot more access to snapback. So if you play with spin, I'm not sure exactly what your technique is like nowadays, but if you're playing with a lot of spin, you'll benefit from that. And the stiffness at 200 pounds is moving towards the control oriented end of the scale. Things we'd have to look out for, obviously, with this string, the tension maintenance is a little bit off at 48.2%, bit concerning. But that is pretty much it. Unfortunately, we don't have a string-to-string friction. That wasn't measured on the table. But the energy return, again, is quite low at 84.6%. So again, indicating that it has a low shot speed, which is good for your length control. And hopefully, if you aren't getting overpowered in the majority of the matches you're already playing, that means you'll be able to open up your shoulders and really start hitting harder and try to dominate the rallies, try to make that transition to an aggressive baseliner. So that is the first option. I had a look around and this string comes to approximately 10 to 12 pound, but I'm not sure how much shipping costs are from the website as well, so it might come to a little bit more than that number. I'm gonna assume that shipping is no more than 5 to 6 pounds. So overall, let's say that this setup costs £18 to implement. The second option is we're going to go a little bit different in terms of strategy. This one is more looking for a string that's going to help us with our height control over the net. And so if you're coming up, I don't know who you play often, but if your opponents are powerful or they have a particular shot that is powerful, like a serve, a ground stroke, whatever, this type of string is going to help you neutralize that. So maybe you're unable to make the transition because it's your opponent that is getting the first strike in. If you're able to neutralize his strength, most of these players do not have a plan B. And if they do, then that's another issue we're going to have to tackle. But let's just work on the premise that he doesn't have a plan B. He has that big shot as a plan A. If you're able to neutralize that, from there, at least we can try to transition and start to stay on the front foot in the rallies more often than we have been in the past. So the string I'm going to highlight for this is the Wise Cannon Scorpion 16L 1.28mm version. And the main reason I've had a look at this string is due to the lower deflection. With a lower deflection, the strings do not move as much, and so we have more predictability over the height, the direction, and overall trajectory control. This comes in handy when we're facing big shots, such as a serve, for example, and we don't have the time when we're facing a big serve to start winding up and hitting the ball as hard as we can. We're going to have to shorten our swing, and hopefully the extra help we get from the setup in terms of that height control allows us to keep the ball low over the net and prevent our opponent from attacking the second ball. And this goes for either a big forehand or a big backhand as well. If we're defending, he's hit a big shot. If we're defending and we don't really have time or the position on court to attack, then the best thing to do is to try and neutralize, and we can do so by keeping the ball low over the net and hopefully getting it skidding through the court low, and that way we can keep our opponent from continually attacking over and over again. Of course, with extra height control, we may be, on some opportunities, be able to direct it onto his baseline, but usually that invites the opponent to come in and finish the net. A lot of players nowadays aren't able to do that, but it's just something to bear in mind, that we have both options, either to skim it over the net or drop it within a foot of their baseline. And I feel like this string is suited to be able to do both of those things. Of course, if we have a look at the dwell time at 34.7, that is quite low. And so I'm a little bit concerned that this string, despite the stiffness being 200 pounds, I'm a little bit concerned the shot speed could be a bit too high. And so while it's good for defending, if we get the opportunity to transition and start attacking, perhaps there isn't enough length control there to stay on the front foot. There might be a fear of overhitting the ball. But again, the only way really to know is to take that out on court and test it for yourself. So yeah, bear in mind the type of opponents you're playing. If they do have a particularly big shot and not too much around that, it might be worth looking at the Wise Cannon Scorpion. I also had a look at the string tension maintenance. This one is a little bit better than our previous choice. It had a tension maintenance of 35.2%. The string to string friction is 0.087, so probably a little bit above average for polyester. And so while the access to snapback is there, it won't be extreme. And we've got the energy return at 87.2%, which is again quite high. Again, indicating that the shot speed could be a potential problem. But those are the two strings I'm gonna highlight for this exercise. Have a think about it, and we're gonna actually go through how much this string costs. I had a look at a few websites, and this string isn't too pricey at all. I'm looking at roughly about £8 to £10 for the string, including postage. So that's even cheaper than the string savers at some websites. So very interesting, and if that is something you want to take into account, probably wise to do so. Your budget is £60, so I don't think it's too much of an issue. But yeah, if you're watching this and your budget is a little bit lower than £60, then £8 to £10 for a string including postage nowadays is really good. So those are the three options we've had a look at today. It's probably best to reflect on all three, see which one appeals to you most, and then when you're ready, take it out onto court, test it, and make a note of what went right and what didn't go right. And if you want to, you can come back to me and we'll reflect on it together, see how we can further strengthen the setup, or maybe if there's some weaknesses that came up during the test, we could try and hide that in our next setup troubleshooting. So good luck to you with that. I'm interested to see how you get on. I do get the feeling it's probably going to be more than a one-part process. We might have to revisit it maybe 2, 3, perhaps even more times than that, because it is a pretty big transition. And so that is it for this episode of Setup Troubleshooting. I want to thank you all for watching. I do appreciate it. If you have any suggestions, just drop them in the comments. I do take everything on board. And if you did enjoy it, it might be worth checking out our other content and staying tuned for future episodes that I plan to release soon. So yeah, that's it for this episode, and hopefully I'll see you all in future. Until then, everyone, take care. I also want to remind everyone that I've created a new private subreddit where we will discuss each other's setups, analyze them, and share each other's findings in the hope that we can all accelerate each other's learning. So if that's something you'd like to be a part of, just drop your Reddit username in the comments, or if you don't want to drop it in the comments, email it to me at cupenyatennis@hotmail.com, and then I will approve you from there. You won't be able to find the subreddit at the moment because it is set to private, but once I've approved you, then you'll be able to find it and contribute. So hopefully I'll see you all there.